Hello, welcome to Shelby Radio. I am Shelby Carino, and this is episode number 716. And today, the topic of conversation is breaking free from codependent systems. Now, before I get started, this is a topic that a lot of people may feel, okay? They feel their way through this, but sometimes the understanding behind it is kind of rare because there's really a spiritual mechanism behind it, okay? And so this whole breaking free from codependent systems is a topic now in the lightworker community that has to be addressed. Because as a light worker, you're never needing to be codependent on anything. If anything, you're breaking free from the systems, right? Because you're bringing more light into the space in order to bring more neutrality, to bring more sovereignty, to do the opposite of what these codependent systems are about. So if your nervous system kind of just came online and is like, oh, I just perked up a little bit, I need to listen to this one. Or if maybe you even felt your stomach drop a little bit and you kind of felt a pit in your stomach, none of that is a coincidence, okay? None of it. Because this is for those of us who have been entangled spiritually, emotionally, energetically, okay, in systems that actually demand our light, but never really actually support the expansion of the light, okay? Let that sink in. Think about if you are in a relationship right now that's very codependent, or is there something in your family structure that is really codependent right now? Is there something in your job, in that system, that is codependent upon you? And that demand for your light to be there all the time, whatever that is, but there's no support to expand that, because they're just taking. That's the codependency. Then, yeah, you really need to listen to this episode today, because whether it's about the job that needs you to save what's going on within the job, or the relationship that you may have that only works if you actually overfunction in the relationship, or maybe you're a part of the community that celebrates your service, yet they're not necessarily celebrating your sovereignty, then that's something that you need to pay attention to. Because this specific episode is about naming the pattern that is at play, understanding that loop within that pattern, and then finally choosing freedom from it. Okay? So I want to get into first about what is a codependent system to begin with. So I'm going to have to break this down. Okay? A codependent system, well, let me back up. A lot of times when we hear the word codependency, we tend to think of codependency as a personal trait, like something that we're going to heal from in therapy within our relationships, okay? And that is just a very teeny tiny micro level version of codependency. But if we look at the bigger level of codependency, if we name it like the macro level of codependency, we'll find that codependent systems are actually structures that stay alive by draining the energy of those who care the most about the system. So I call that the heart of the job, the heart of that system. It's the people who really want it to make it, but yet they're the ones that's being drawn, being pulled from the most. Okay. So let me say this again in really, really simple terms. Codependent systems stay alive by draining the energy of those who care the most. And these systems expect more from those who are more capable. They reward loyalty with more responsibility. They gaslight sometimes those who express their burning out. And then they also shame those who ask for balance. And then resist the real change, because real change breaks the dependency loop. So even for me in my situation of having a job I have to go to every day now, not that I have to go there every day, I choose to go there every day. It's not necessarily the people in the system itself. It's how the system has been created over time. And that is what is pushing down upon me to the level of expectations from the regular classroom teachers. Okay? So it's like we can't just have an assessment and get the result back. Now it's, okay, we have the assessment. Now we have the result. Now we have to meet about the result. Now we have to have a graph to document the result. Now we have to meet with this person over here on curriculum to have another graph to talk about the result in order for us to now follow what another admin wants us to do for this setting over here. And we have to know that result for that. It's just like it's one thing feeds the other thing. And before you know it, you're like, am I caught up in the result and getting the metrics down? Or am I caught up in, can I just go back to teaching? So the result can happen. All right. So this happens every day, whether people are conscious to it or not, where they expect more from those who are capable. Because if you weren't capable, you wouldn't even sign up probably for the job. Okay. So when we find ourselves being loyal, we have to catch ourselves not necessarily taking on more responsibility if it's not appropriate for you to have that responsibility. Okay. So I can be loyal and not carry 8 other jobs. Okay. And sometimes you don't need to have more responsibility because you're cheating someone else from the experience of having that responsibility. Okay. So pay attention to that when you are in these codependent systems that are counting on your light to keep it alive. Okay. And if anybody starts talking bad about you because you're in your spiritual burnout phase, well, too bad. Because you know what? Nothing's probably going to happen because they know you carry the light and they need you to keep the codependent system functioning. Okay? I had someone tell me that had a session with me, and they're a teacher in another district. And they were saying to me, Shelby, I understand that the district that they work in needs them more than my client needs the district to work in and have a job. And I said to that client, I said, well, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. They need you more than you need them. So if you're burned out, you need to express it. Maybe something needs to come in to help other people that are burning out. And if someone wants to talk bad about that, okay, fine, let them. It doesn't change the fact that there's burnout, okay? And maybe they can take that energy and recycle it and, turn it into something good where someone maybe can come in and help the staff not be so burned out. I don't know. So there's all these different facets when you're in a codependent system as a light worker that are at play. And if you have someone in that system with you that's shaming you because you're asking for the balance, too bad. Okay? I know for me, I have asked for balance in, the classroom distribution of how many kids, not even how many kids I have in there, but just a boy-girl ratio or academic level ratio. Like, can we rebalance classrooms? Because the lack of balance is not working. And that system is going to evaluate regardless if there's balance or not. So for me, as the person that works within that system, well, sometimes I have to stand up and say, hey, we need to shine some light on this over here. And can we bring balance to this situation? Because if you don't sometimes bring light to it, then maybe the people who can affect that change don't know it's a problem if you don't speak up. But if someone else is shaming you for it, well, okay, just take that energy, recycle it, put it in towards a goal that you want within that system. Okay. But if you're in a system and they really don't want change, they don't want someone coming in and changing it, well, now it's going to break the dependency loop that's going on. And then you have an opportunity to decide, is this where I need to stay? Is it time for me to exit? Because it's more information you're getting about the system. And remember, your soul isn't there to collect the paycheck. That's not what this is about. So you have to continue, even though you're collecting paychecks, right? You have to be aware of what is going on within the systems. Now, I spoke, I think it was last week about the spiritual warfare, or was it the week before that? When did I speak about that? No, last week I spoke about the burnout. So it was the week before. I spoke about the spiritual warfare just within colleagues. Okay. But there can also be spiritual warfare behind the system that has been built. All you have to do is look at the government. Okay. And everything we're going through with the government. So this isn't just about being in a toxic workplace necessarily, or being in an outdated system, whatever it may be, whether it's the healthcare system, the school system, the transportation system, whatever system it is. This is spiritual warfare that disguises itself or masks itself as policy, or it masks itself as protocol, or it masks itself as tradition. We've always done it this way. And when you are a light being and you walk into a dense system, just your very existence of walking into that system threatens the very survival of that system. And you don't even have to open your mouth. Just walking into it already makes you a threat. And that system, whether consciously or not, is going to try to absorb you. It's going to try to control you. It's going to try to crush you. Because that's what those systems do. And you may hear phrases where people do it in a more negative way of, We need you, and not in the light worker way of we need you. You know what I mean? Like it's the codependent desperation of we need you because we're siphoning off your light, right? Um or they may be like, "Well, just one more thing. Please, just one more thing. Help us with one more thing." And you're like, "I have no desire to help anybody with one more thing. Like F off. Like no." Okay? Or they may say the whole thing of, "Can you help fix the mess? It's a mess. Can you help fix it?" And you're sitting over here going, gosh, is that going to be draining on me to fix it? Because no one else is really going to come in and fix it, and they're just siphoning off more light. Okay, but what all of this really means is, will you please stay stuck with us? Will you please keep shining your light for free? Please don't grow beyond us. Does that make sense? Have you been in a situation like that? And you get to the place where you're like, I can't. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's family, your spouse. I mean, you get to a place where you're like, I refuse to be stuck. Like I remember, talk about a relationship. So back in the day when Joe and I were dancing around each other and, he still had this girlfriend and I was watching him bounce back and forth between both worlds, meaning the spiritual world of the soul healing he was doing with me and then falling back into Matrix 3D doing girlfriend relationship another way. Well, I got to a point where, just like in a job or anything else, I got to a point where I worked that relationship with him to a point where something had to happen. The ceiling had to break because we weren't going anywhere. And I knew if he didn't make a choice between what he was doing in the 3D world of girlfriend and what he was doing in the 5D world of soul change work with me, that this wasn't there was no future for us because I could no longer sustain giving more light out, him utilizing that, and then sabotaging it, going back into the matrix of a safe relationship, okay? I couldn't do that anymore. So what I did was I set that goal for myself and I was at, okay, he can be stuck. I refuse to be stuck anymore. He can have whatever light he has. I'm done shining mine without a return. And then I was at, you can stay where you are and not grow, and I'm going to go ahead and grow, okay? Because I'm going to go grow beyond what this is. So that's why back in, when was that? 2016? I think that was in March of 2016 or something. I had called him over to my house. Yeah, it was 2016. I called him over to my house, my apartment. And that's where I was like breaking up with the energy. Like I was breaking up with him and the energy, right? So I was like, well, I'm going to leave him better than, how he came to me, da, da, da. So I had this whole little setup of things that I was giving back to him from Hawaii on our Huna trip or, whatever. I was honoring him before I left him is basically what I was doing. And I was solid in that decision. Like I was done. I was at the end of my rope. I didn't care. I had no feelings. I was done. And it was a 12-hour experience, okay, of what happened. And that, though, in that experience is what it took to move him over the edge. And how the next morning he was, showed up on my doorstep and was like, I broke up with her and I choose you. And, I'm so sorry for all of this over here. And, cause it was, and we've been together ever since, because it was that turning point in my world where I was at. I have to keep growing and you don't have to come with me, but I'm going to honor you for what the growth is we had during this phase. And then there was something in him that triggered to go, I need to break free from my fear of what could possibly be on the other side and get away from what I'm comfortable with so I can go see what's on the other side. So there was a choice. There was a choice I made that was, love you, this has been good, but I'm going to keep going and I'll just bring somebody else in that's ready for the next level. See ya. That's kind of where I was at. And then, he was kind of at, well, shit, I don't want to lose what we've done, so yeah, it's worth it. Let me break up with this over here so I can get out of my fear and get over into faith where you are. And then bada boom, bada bing, it happened. So no matter what codependent system it is, because everyone runs codependency in some form or fashion. Okay, at some point in time, in any relationship, job, whatever. Everybody runs it. And then that's what helps us get to the place of acknowledgement that we're in a codependent system. And when you can check in with your soul and go, okay, I'm a part of that codependent system, I don't want to be a part of that anymore, then you see where you're stuck. You see where your light's being used. You see that maybe people don't want you to grow because you will probably leave them behind. But that's their choice. They don't have to be left behind. They can grow with you. But that's what creates leaders, is the people who are willing to step out on change. Okay? And it starts within you, breaking free from the codependent systems. Because even in Pilates, it's so funny. Like, when we're doing our footwork on the reformer and, we're doing these heel dips under the bar of the reformer. And this one Pilates instructor that I go to, when we're doing this particular, dip your foot, dip your ankle under and all that, she'll repeat, faster is easier and slower is harder, and it's funny because I bring that up because, yes, it's easy to stay in a codependent system because you know what the codependent system is, and you're probably used to it. Just like if you're doing, say, this Pilates move or a workout move, faster is easier because you're not having to slow it down to really fixate on the form or fixate on the muscle that is working within that form. Okay? Slower is harder, right? Getting out of a codependent system is harder because you're going into new territory. You're slowing things down. You're having to look around and say, what's next? All right? So it's just about choosing to no longer be stuck and moving on. So, but sometimes we get into this energetic trap. Okay? And this is the spiritual layer that nobody really talks about sometimes, is that a codependent system is going to mirror what your inner wound is. So let's say, for example, you have felt unseen as a child. Well, the codependent system that you're in is going to make sure you're unseen because it's going to bring up that inner child wound of not being seen. Let's say you're running a inner wound of I never fit in with the group. Well, you're going to manifest something in a codependent system where you don't fit in with the group. And on a spiritual level, there might be a lot of spiritual warfare reasons why you're not in that group. but it doesn't change the fact that it's still mirroring an inner wound for you that you've never felt like you can be a part of a group. Okay? Another example, if you've ever felt responsible for everyone else's emotions. Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty of that. And being a Pisces, and I do emotion and feelings, I have really had to learn how often I have felt responsible for how other people feel. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, how have I even done that? But I have, and it has changed the way I would be in certain situations. But once I got to the level of wisdom of, wait a minute, I am no longer responsible for anybody's emotions. That's on them. I don't have to take that on. My whole life changed. And I was just like, oh my God, that is so freeing. That I don't have to worry about that because I'm no longer running the pattern. But it took a lot of hiccups, a lot of bumps, a lot of bruises, a lot of hits, for me to finally understand that, to get it, to reframe it in my energetic system. Let's see. Here's another one. If you have ever felt, oh, that makes me want to yawn. If you have ever felt like you're afraid of being too much, okay, guilty of this one, or being too spiritual, that's mirroring an inner wound, because light is expansive. And when you have a lot of light, you can be afraid that if I bring all that light into a space, I'm going to be too much. Or if I bring all of this in, people are going to think I'm way too spiritual. Well, in a codependent system, that can be a very big energetic trap. So like, for example, for me, we have these meetings like that we have to go to, these ARD meetings or whatever. And it's in a small room, and there's like usually, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There could be anywhere from 7 to 8 people in this room, okay, doing this meeting. And I've had to do several of them, quite a few of them now already. And I walk into the space, and me being the light worker, feeling everything, I'm feeling everything before I even walk in the room. Okay. But when I walk in that room, I immediately am like, whoosh, like I feel all the energy, and I have to process that through. So when I'm in there, I'm taking all that energy and I'm quickly transmuting it into whatever it needs to be transmuted into. And then when it's my turn to talk, I'm just kind of like boing, 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 boing. But the people in that room that I have these meetings with, they can hold the space with me. So that tells me I'm no longer in a codependent system there, because there's no trap in the energy. They're allowing that light to come in and be distributed. And then it's a win-win for everybody. So that's how I always know I'm at the right place of employment, is because there's more of that in the building than there is not. So that tells me I'm not in necessarily a codependent system in my own school building, okay, which is good, or I wouldn't be working there, okay? But there can be codependent systems within the structure of the building. It could be within the team, maybe a certain grade level or a certain team or a certain group of people or whatever, like they're everywhere, okay? But when you recognize it, and if it triggers you, then don't let yourself get trapped in it. Just observe it. What is it for you, and move on. Okay. And this is another one that I have felt for myself, is that, well, what if I'm terrified of being cast out for telling the truth? Okay. How many times have you gone into a relationship or gone into your job or gone into a family, situation or something, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to be quiet and not say anything. And maybe that's appropriate, but then there's a certain point in time where you're like, okay, now it's time for me to say something, but you don't want to be cast out for telling the truth because these people may not appreciate the truth. Well, you're in a codependent system. And maybe that's not a place where you tell the truth because it's codependent and they're not changing. So your choice is to stay in it and just keep your mouth shut or get out. Okay? So these are energetic traps though that we put ourselves in because they're mirrors to our inner wound as a child, and we have to be and put ourselves in situations that test that mirror, that test that wound, so we can see how far we've come in our spiritual journey, in our spiritual work. Because these are the systems that are familiar to us because we grew up within those systems. And that's where that loop in that system begins, okay? And so the moment you shine brighter and you start questioning things, which is really what this whole thing is about, the system is going to react, okay? And they're going to react often through other people's behavior coming at you. And that's how they try to pull you back in because they're like, oh, we got a live wire over here. Nope, that's going to break the system. Let me use this person to wrangle them back in and, keep you under control. But a light worker will never allow for that because their soul won't allow for it. Because if they've done so much work, they're going to be like, sorry, I'm working within the system, doing what I need to do within the system. But if you're going to be over here within that system that I'm working in and try to control me within the system, then we have a problem. Peace out. I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people in that position right now with their jobs. And as a reminder, you're not crazy for this, okay? You're not being rebellious, and you're definitely let me just say it this way, you're awake. And it's okay to be awake in a system that is codependent or asleep. Because there's a time and a place that maybe you being awake and then you getting the mirror that you need for your inner wounds, maybe there's a time and a place that your awakeness awakes others after you have seen what you need to see for yourself in those mirrors. And then you can evaluate, do you stay? Do you go? Is the system beginning to change a little bit? Is there one or two family members that are changing or a coworker that's changing? And if so, well, then your light is starting to expand and maybe that system won't become so codependent. So there's many of us right now in these systems, infiltrating these systems to help the people in the systems that are waking up because they don't know how to find us otherwise right now because there's so much in the system. So I can relate to that. I'm back in the system. I've done my spiritual awakening over the last decade and a half. Okay, I've had time. But if I was just in the system with no awakening, no work, no nothing, and I was just kind of thinking that something existed out here, well, I'm not going to just go out and find my podcast, that I put out because I'm tired from being in the system every day, right? Like I've said, I come home, I'm tired. Like I don't even have the space to bring something else in. So it's like the system is bringing the light workers to the people in the system. That's why so many people are re-emerging back into this workforce, okay? Because we're here to help the other people in the system. And then when you wake up enough people in the system, meaning you're not really going to wake them up, they'll wake themselves up, but your light is there to do that. Then when enough of that's been ignited, divine timing and divine light will decide where they're going to use you. They'll either keep you there and you'll keep doing something, or you'll move someplace else or whatever. And that's how it works. And you just start a new loop on a new frequency within that system instead of getting stuck in it because the system is trying to loop you. Make sense? So let's look at certain signs of whether or not you may be trapped in a system like that is these are flags that alert your soul. Okay, that says, hey, you're stuck in a codependent system. Like, pay attention, sister. Okay. If you're feeling energetically heavy and just thinking about what happens when you walk into a space and how heavy it is, okay, you're in a codependent system because energetically, everything is heavy. It's not light, it's heavy. You got to pay attention to that. If you're the one fixing or holding emotional space for others and it's constant, it's not just like every once in a while, but it's like every time you walk into the family dinner, every time you walk into a specific relationship, every time you walk into work, whatever it is. If you're the one that's holding everything and it's all the time, you're trapped in that system for right now until you're not. If you're afraid of what's going to happen to the system if you leave, like, I cannot tell you, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many client sessions I have had with people that are in these upper level executive positions and they have so much responsibility, but the system itself is collapsing. And they're like, Shelby, I can't leave. If I leave, the whole thing falls apart. I'm like, well, then what benefit is this for you? Because you're literally holding everything in the palm of your hand. Well, I can't let them down. Well, it looks like they've let you down because you're the one holding the system in your hand. Okay? You can't do that. So you need to train everybody else to hold the system, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I never even looked at it that way. And I'm like, yeah, because if you're holding all the light and you don't give an opportunity for others to hold it, well, you're holding the whole system, and that's actually unethical, or could be spiritually unethical, because you're cheating all these other people from becoming sovereign because you're taking on all the accountability, that you're trapped in that system and it only functions because you're in it. Okay. No, it's got to function without you as well. So you might also be trapped in a codependent system if you find yourself apologizing for taking care of yourself. Like, if you need to take a mental health day, you take it. Don't apologize for it. If you need 5 minutes to decompress and go get a Dr. Pepper, well, by God, you go do it. Okay? Like, never apologize because you're taking care of yourself, especially if it's once in a blue moon. Okay? But if you're fantasizing about quitting every day, like every time you go to your job, you just want to quit, well, if you know you're not lazy and that's not the reason why you want to quit, but because your soul is just tired, yeah, you're trapped in a codependent system. And then if you become spiritually resentful, which we have spoken about last week, or the week before, the last week about spiritual burnout. If you're getting resentful, yeah, you're in a codependent system. But the biggest one, in my opinion, about a sign of being trapped in a codependent system is you feel like you're being used more as a tool instead of being used as a person. And this is one I don't want to say I'm struggling with it, but I'm going back and forth with it, which is, do y'all see me as a person, or do you just see me as the tool that has to abide by all of these procedures because someone over here is telling you that this has to get done, but the person who's having to do this, which would be me, is expressing some concern, or whatever. So it's kind of like you have to, if you don't feel like you're being treated as a person, you're being treated as a tool, yeah, you're trapped in a codependent system that is used to doing things its own way and how they want to do it. and you're over here screaming as a light worker, I just need you to see me as a person and speak to me as a person instead of a tool that has to get task A done, task B done, task C and D. I need you to come in and be relatable. Because if you're not relating to me, if you're not in rapport with me, I'm going to be like, fuck your system. And I'm going to rebel against it. Okay? Because I'm going to feel like a tool. And that tool will break at some point. So this is a part of leadership also that people have to realize that, you really have to understand where your people are, because you can be in upper management, you can be in leadership, you can be in all that. But at the end of the day, you have people running that company or running that family or whatever, that keep the wheels greased. And if those people just all walk out, your leadership means nothing, because you failed because everyone walked out. So you missed something in the system, right? You missed it. So you really got to pay attention to where these codependent systems are. And you can break free from the system without necessarily burning it to the ground. All right? And this is how you do this, okay? If you're in a codependent system and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. It's not about necessarily blowing it up and then walking away. Doing a Dracarius move from Game of Thrones, right? Where the dragon comes in and sets the fire and then flies off, we're not doing that here, okay? So you don't have to blow something up to walk away from it. Unless maybe it's appropriate and your intuition is telling you, yeah, you need to blow it up and walk away, okay? What it's more about is you've got to see the system that you're in clearly, whether it's a relationship system, a family system, a governmental system, a healthcare system, an education system. You have to see the system from all angles so you can get a perspective on really what's going on within that system. And expand the system. So like for me, it's not like, oh, I'm just looking at the little school that I teach at. I'm looking at the whole system that goes out into the district, that goes out into the state, that goes out into the government. Okay, I'm looking at the whole thing. And you can never have guilt about looking at it. Okay, like, oh, if I look at it, something will happen. No, look at it. Okay, have no fear. Okay. And be ready to look at what you need to see, because there's some energetic truth in it. Right? So it's about seeing the system clearly. And it's also about unhooking your identity from the system in order to receive validation. So I had to move through this piece with me at the school. It was like, okay, I have an identity here at school, and then I have an identity outside of school. And so I had to get to a place of, no, I have one identity. And I had to get to a place of, I don't need these people to validate my identity. I know where my identity stands and what I am. But what I had to get to was, there has to be a value for this identity that I carry at some point. And it's not the paycheck that I get every 2 weeks. Okay? It's an identity of value within the system itself, within the building. Okay? And so until codependency measures are moved, well, my identity and unhooking that from the system is going to be whatever it's going to be. Now, another thing, what all this breaking free is about without doing Dracarius, is you have to create these little itty bitty micro movements, these little bitty small movements of freedom. And it can be an emotional freedom, a spiritual freedom, and eventually it'll release you physically, right? It'll be a physical freedom. That's important, okay? It's also about establishing energetic boundaries, even if you still have to be in it for a while. Okay? You may be in this codependent system. Your light is expanding. You're seeing it. You're creating these little mini movements that you're seeing a level of freedom in coworkers or your students or your family member or your spouse or whatever. And you're unhooking your identity because you no longer need validation for your identity. And so now you're seeing things a lot more clear. So now you can establish boundaries. Because once you have boundaries, then you may be able to stay in that situation a little bit longer, promote a little bit more change, get more clarity for yourself. Because what it's about in the final end here is your sovereignty, where you're choosing your personal sovereignty, your personal peace over any survival pattern you've ever run in your life. And that's powerful. Okay? So breaking free from these codependent systems can get you to sovereignty with yourself from your own survival instincts and patterns that you run. And you never have to be that hero in the system. Who cares? Okay? That never is going to happen because the system isn't here to rescue you. Okay? You're here to rescue yourself. You have to be your own hero in your own system of you and your own sovereignty, not the system you identify with out of codependency. Because that system's not going to come and pick you up and say, hey, you're safe. I've got you. You're rescued. You just have to choose yourself. And that's a very powerful place to be. Whew. Okay, I just bowed that through. So codependent systems will never survive. They do not survive when the brightest of lights stop feeding the system. So that's why people, like, if someone sees a broken system, they'll encourage people to not spend money there or, you know, something like that, right? Because they're trying to break the system. Like, stop sending light into a broken system because all you're doing is just making it a bigger broken system, right? So you have to know when to stop feeding these broken systems. So even if your awakening process shakes, rattles, and rolls the foundation of something, of some kind of system, but yet you're also noticing that the more clear you get, the more offended other people get, well, that's just kind of the way it is, okay? Your clarity may offend people who are still fragile. But your soul is here to be free. It's never here to be managed. And I'm going through that and have gone through that with my students. Is in the beginning of the year, I had to manage so much behavior. And I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to be, which is why I created the LIT Leaders in Training program for my students, because I was at a place of like, no, they have to develop their own sovereignty. They have to learn how to work inside of this system, but they have to choose their own freedom of themselves and not me controlling every move they make. Because if they don't learn some of this freedom, what are they going to do when they get to middle school? What are they going to do when they get to high school? What are they going to do when they, go out into the real world or college or a job? Like, these are life skills that at young ages they have to learn, okay? So remember, you're also not here to keep things the same. The same is very, very boring, even if to you it seems safe. You're here to build what needs to be new. And that new of what needs to be built is beginning with you. You are the new build. And when you build you, you are going to build outside of you. So really let that sink in today on this episode. because it's really, really, really important, as a lot of these codependent systems are going to come tumbling down. And you want to be on the other side when it's tumbling down, but yet grateful that you were able to be in that system to gain more of your inner wisdoms, or see what your inner wound has been, and really do the energetic reframes and change work to change it before the system collapsed. Because at least you got it a little easier than how maybe you could have gotten it had it collapsed and you were never a part of it. All right? So, that's a lot. I got nothing left. That's it. That is it on that one. And I am under an hour. That is shocking. Okay. So, again, this is number 4 in a little mini series of 10 about so many topics. But I will be back next week, same time, same place. So until then, take care.